Mr. Smith, can you hear us? Mr. Smith, would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and your DOC number.
My name is Carl Smith. My DOC number 611201.
All right, Mr. Smith, we're here for a revocation decision this morning. I want to recognize that we have Mr. Early. Welcome, Mr. Early. We appreciate your participation. We'd like to hear from you shortly. Mr. Smith, you're here for a revocation decision. You're accused of violating the conditions of your parole. First, let me ask you, sir, do you have a parole revocation questionnaire there in front of you? Do you have a document there in front of you, Mr. Smith?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that your signature at the bottom of that page dated October 21st, 2022?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Based on the information you provided there, it was determined you're not eligible for appointed counsel. Are you ready to proceed this morning?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to read the allegations against you. You will enter a plea, guilty or not guilty, and then we'll have a discussion about it, and we'll hear from Mr. Early as well. You're accused of violating condition number 1, which states on October 5th, 2022, you were released from Union Parish Detention Center and were to report to the Covington District within 48 hours. You failed to report as ordered and did not report until October 11th, 2022. How do you plead to violating condition number 1?
Guilty, Your Honor.
All right. Then there's condition number 3. You're accused of violating, and it says, after being released from the Union Parish Detention Center, you failed to reside at the approved sex offender residence plan address of 60360 Emerald Drive in Lacombe, Louisiana. You were living by your own permission at your grandmother's residence in Roseland. Your grandmother's residence was not an approved residence. You resided there for 5 days. Mr. Smith, how do you plead to violating condition number 3?
Guilty, Your Honor.
Okay. Your case has been assigned to Mr. Marabella to answer his questions.
Good morning, Mr. Smith.
Good morning.
You got out on October the 5th, right?
Yes, sir.
And you were told to report within 48 hours. You pled guilty, you didn't do it. Why not?
Mr. What you say your name is?
Arabella.
All right, Mr. Albert. All right. When I came home, Mr. Albert, I had got my people or whatever to come get me in New Orleans or whatever. I came home that Thursday. Now when they had got me, they had took me by my grandmother now. My grandmother was in the hospital or whatever, and she was sick. I had just did 4 years and 6 months. I was over there by my grandmother, helping her, you know what I'm saying, being around her for a little minute. It was hard for me getting transportation. My mother did not have no transportation or whatever. Her friend had bought me up. My auntie had took me by my other grandmother's house, and I was staying over there for a little bit. But I had told them that I gotta go to Lacombe, to the little address or whatever, and report. I had went that Tuesday and reported over there. I was not trying to run. I had just came home. And I'm being honest with y'all.
So you say you didn't have transportation yet then?
Yes, sir. When I had just came home, I ain't had no transportation. My grandmother.
Yes, did you have access to a phone?
Sir?
Do you have access to a phone?
At the time, Your Honor, I didn't have a cell phone, but my grandmother had a house phone.
Well, why didn't you call and tell them your situation and try to get permission to be a little late?
When I had told, all right, Mr. Bill, when I had told my mother or whatever that I was trying to get out there in Lacombe, she told me she was going, at the time, I don't think she had my parole off Steve Everly because I ain't never showed up in 48 hours in Covington. But the man in Lacombe, she said she was going to get his number. Because when I had got released, I had told her to call him or whatever, I had told her to call him. And she said she was going to call him to get his number. But at the time being, it was so much going on, I don't even think she had called him. But I had finally got a ride. I had got my people to bring me out there that Tuesday. When I had showed up out there at the spot in Lacombe that Tuesday, I had called my parole officer. Now they had another guy had my parole office number, so he gave it to my mama. So my mama called my parole office and I told him I was at the spot. He told me to show up at his office in 48 hours. The next morning. I showed up at his office the next morning. Now, when I showed up the next morning, I explained my situation. He locked me up. I was not trying to run. It was hard for me to get transportation. If I was trying to run, or if I wasn't trying to comply, I wouldn't have never came to the address. I know y'all they gotta do their job or whatever, but I had just came home. My grandmother was in the hospital, man. I was trying to better myself. I got a job waiting on me out there.
All right, let's slow down. You were fully aware of what your responsibility were. You indicated that you knew that. Pled guilty to these 2 charges. Is that right?
So,
How far is Roseland from Lacombe?
oh, it's a nice little drive, man. It's probably like about 30, 40 minutes. It's a nice little drive. It's like right there besides A Meat. It's like right there on the side of A Meat. But I was not trying to run. I was not trying to do nothing bad and come back to jail because I had just came home. I was trying to get myself together. I most definitely had showed up to the address or whatever I was supposed to parole out to, and I most definitely came to the parole office. But when I eventually came to the parole office, I had got locked up or whatever.
Mr. Smith, been in jail for what, 4 months now?
Yes, sir.
Over
Yes,
4
sir.
months?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a job if you weren't revoked today? Where are you
Yes,
gonna be
sir.
working?
I'm gonna be
Where you
working
gonna
this.
be working?
I'm gonna be working in Santa. I got a job called Santa Farm. I had Covington, Louisiana. It's like a little chicken plant. They got a guy next door to me. He was telling me about the little chicken plant. I got the phone number and everything. I most definitely got a job. But by the address being out here in Lacombe, if I was to go back out there to it, I can just get somebody to bring me out there because I'm most definitely out here in Covington right now. So it most definitely ain't gonna be no problem because I'm already out here. I most definitely show up. And the parole office, right? And the parole office right here across the street.
Now let's hear from Bill.
Mr.
I can
Smith,
walk.
just Smith.
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, Your Honor.
Hey, Lot, it's not on your end, it's on their end.
Okay.
Everything's good. You gotta catch up.
How you been?
Well, obviously frozen. What do you think they're gonna ask and what do you think they're gonna do? Always the most stressful, I think, is parole revocation hearings. It's like you get your taste of freedom and then you get locked back up. And sometimes it seems to be, oh, here we go.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, go ahead, sir. Well, tell us what you want us to know about Mr. Smith.
Are you talking to me, ma'am?
Yes. Is it, I have early, but I see
Okay.
it on your screen. What's your name?
Steve Eberly, like the Everly Brothers?
I apologize. Let me-
That's fine, not a problem.
Go ahead.
Carl Smith is a registered sex offender. On 10/4, I received a sex offender residence plan at 60360 in Lacombe, Louisiana. It was approved, and there was another gentleman that came down with him to that same address. On 10/5, he was released, and he did not show up down there until 10/10, which is 5 days later. When I asked where he was staying at, he said he was staying at his grandmother's house in Roseland, which is about a 40-minute drive, easy. He has had 5 sex offender residence plans that were issued, and the for being for a meat district office, and they were denied for reasons. For some reason, the landlord would not allow him to live there. So he applied down to Emerald Drive and was approved and never showed up. When he did show up, he said he had to get his residence transferred to Roseland, and which circumvented the sex offender residence plan process.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Everly. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us this morning. Let's, Mr. Smith, is there something you'd like to say to us before we vote?
Yes, ma'am. I was, only thing I had wanted to say, I was not trying to run from them. I most definitely had complied and I had showed up. I understand they had got a job to do, and I feel like I agree for my punishment, me not showing up on time. But at the same time, when I came home that Thursday, Your Honor, Friday, I don't even think it was 48 hours, but I know they closed on the weekend, but I didn't have no transportation. So I had showed, when I did get the transportation, Your Honor, I had showed up there Tuesday or whatever. And when I showed up, I had got my mother to call him. Somebody gave him my mother number. Gave him my mother, gave my mother his number. So when my mother had called him or whatever, he told me to show up at the parole office, and the other lady had told me to show up at the office in Mandeville or whatever. I was gonna show up at I showed up at his office, and I was gonna go to Mandeville to show up to take care of my business because I had just came home. But in the process of doing it, I had got locked up. I was not trying to run. I was most definitely trying to comply because I showed up. I understand I had got out, but it was kind of hard for transportation. I ain't even got no transportation. I'm 27. I've been gone 4 years. And the people that I was around, they had no transportation. And I wasn't just trying to get anybody to bring me out here because I didn't want nobody to know where I was staying at or whatever about my situation. But I understand they got a job to do or whatever, but I most definitely was trying to handle my business when I came home. I most definitely got a job waiting for me out here in Covington, Louisiana, called the Center for.
That's enough. That's enough. We're here. You're just repeating yourself. Now, it's not your mother's responsibility. We're prepared to vote. Mr. Arbella, would you go first?
May I ask,
Sure.
Officer Everly, one other question? Officer, is that plan in Lacombe still approved for him, or is that since he's been in jail, it's no longer approved?
No, sir. That residence has been filled up and is no longer approved. They have 3 spots upstairs and 1 downstairs, and it's full at this time. So his residence is no longer valid. His sex offender residence plan is no longer valid. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, officer. Okay. Mr. Smith,
Yes, sir.
it is your responsibility to do the things that you're required to do. You are a sex offender. There are requirements that you have to do as a sex offender. Sometimes, there's some leeway on someone who's out on probation that doesn't have the restrictions of a sex offender, but you have restrictions of a sex offender. And by doing what you did, by ending up going to jail, you lost that approved residence. I've got no other choice except to vote to revoke you. And that would be my vote today. Sorry. Good luck to you.
Mr.
I vote to revoke your parole for the same reason.
And my vote also is to revoke. I find violated of your parole. So today, sir, Mr. Smith, your parole is being revoked. Thank you, Mr. Everly, for your participation today.
Thank you, ma'am.
He did something right. It almost looked like they were trying to find a way not to revoke him. They're like, I wonder if he would have had housing. Would they have said, okay, you can stay? But man, anyone who's a registered sex offender, I just don't feel bad for you at all, sir. It's I couldn't even follow what he was saying. It was just round and round, and I really do like that Mr. Natsa just kind of put him in his place. Like, you can't blame this on your mother. You're speaking in circles. Like, yes. Uh, man, it's like you get locked up, you go out, you gotta follow some rules. You don't, you get back locked up, and you think that there's just it's gonna be like you even had housing set up for you. Like, literally, you have housing set up for you, which I can only assume he's not paying much for. It's like they're actually giving him housing. And just like it's unbelievable. You can't make this stuff up. I don't know what his original sentence was for. The problem is having the last name Smith. Way too many things show up when you Google that. I'm trying and trying and trying. He does show up under certain sex registries, so, but I don't know if those are old listings or I can't find what crime he committed. If you can find the article, please do share it. But scary to think that they even would have let him out if the housing was still available. I think that they might have. Anyways, with that, I will let you go.